All right, remember yesterday's episode where we said bad things tend to happen when the Nashville Predators play the Arizona Coyotes? Well, hey, guess what happened last night? Predators embarrassed by the Yotes out in Tempe. Breakdown of that game. Plus, we'll jump into the Twitter conversation. Would you think Karl Taylor is a replacement for John Hynes this offseason? We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and editor at InsideThePreds.com.
Well,
Welp.
That was trash.
About right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That was it.
Nashville Predators, Arizona Coyotes. Jesus Christ.
Every time, y'all. Not every time, but enough times that it's a whole thing. Did we not tell them? Did they not listen?
I guess it could be worse. I guess it's not the Dallas Buffalo game last night that wound up 10-4.
Yeah. And nobody had a hat trick in that game. They had 9 goal scorers. Dallas had 9 goal scorers. I was like, okay, who are the 2 players that got hat tricks? And I pulled up the stats and I'm like, oh no, you get a goal. You get a goal. It was like Oprah Winfrey does hockey.
They are fighting for our Western Conference playoff tiers that we did the other day.
Yes.
They heard me say they are just okay. And they are like, nope, screw that.
That's right.
So the Nashville Predators, Arizona Coyotes. Preds went down 1-0 in the first period off a goal by Brett Ritchie. Outshot 18-8 in the first period. I feel like that's something that we need to mention.
Sure do.
And then a whole lot of nothing until a 50-second span in the third where the Coyotes added 2 more. Cody Glass scored with 2 minutes left, but then Nick Schmaltz closed the door at the end with another goal. 4-1. Again, Jesus Christ. The final score, Preds lose to the Arizona Coyotes because, of course, they did. And one word to describe last night's game.
Okay, ironically, after the whole Disney kerfuffle last night, I am using a Disney reference for my one word. So my one word is Ursula the Sea Witch from The Little Mermaid. So you've got Ariel. She has this tough choice to make. Is she going to pursue the love, this prince that she's fallen in love with, and knowing that she could lose her family because, if you get legs, you can't just go back to your mer family, but she's miserable. No. So she goes, and Ursula paints herself as this like empathetic listening ear who has sympathy for the troubles of all these people. And she helps because this is her purpose now. She understands what people longs for, and she uses her magic for good. Arizona is Ursula the Sea Witch, my friends. They're a team who you think understands what Nashville is going through. They understand growing pains, rebuilding, resetting, taking a new direction, how difficult that could be. Nashville headed into Mullet Arena and they sold their voice in exchange for legs, and Flotsam and Jetsam just meddled with it. And the Predators were thwarted so much more than Ariel was in that movie. They were lured into believing one thing. They were lured into believing, hey, you know what? We could be a playoff team. But they left realizing, you know what? Maybe we're not. So, you know what? This is where I see that game last night. Arizona, they're harmless. They're okay. They're going to help you get 2 points to the playoffs. No, they're not, friends. They are Ursula the Sea Witch. And they are going to absolutely steal your legs or voice either way. Yeah. They're spoilers.
She gave her the legs.
She gave her the legs, but she was going to take the legs back. if she didn't get the kiss. Remember all the people that Ursula had won over, they were like little floaty things. Like they didn't have legs.
I
You know
haven't
what I'm
seen Little
saying?
Mermaid in years,
Oh, I could do a whole dramatic reenactment for you, but we won't do that this episode.
complete with Under the Sea. I will say that Zach Cassian does look like one of the eels. Just the stoic, evil-looking face with the teeth or whatever.
Yes.
And my word for last night's game is coyote. Not because the Arizona Coyote, because of Wile E. Coyote. Now, let's make a face. The actual team named Coyotes, they weren't Wile E. Coyote. They were the Roadrunners.
Yes.
Not the well, at this point, probably the Tucson Roadrunners. Nashville Predators were the Wile E. Coyotes last night. It's like becoming a joke with Arizona at this point, isn't it? Where it's just like every time you think the Preds are like, all right, we're on a roll, we're feeling ourselves a little bit, a couple of rough games, but we have the sky's the limit for us. We got all these young players playing well and figuring things out. And then you just get to Arizona and it's like, you're chasing the Arizona around. They're the Roadrunners. They go meep and just like lead like right to the edge of a cliff. Predators just run off it, look down at nothingness beneath them, hold out a sign. It's like, well, this 4-1 loss is going to hurt. And then just do the body drops while your head remains thing and then just pew, splat. Yeah. And can't you just see Matt Duchene walking out of the arena last night as like the little accordion guy, like after getting like just crushed by the most mid team in the NHL right now. It's like this every time. Remember, one of the big losses that spurred this whole we need to start trading off some veteran things was last month against the Arizona Coyotes, where the Preds came out and looked as equally flat and as equally bad as they did last night. It's just becoming a common theme. And that's the main thing, Anne. Like, this wasn't just like two rebuilding teams going at it or anything like that. The Nashville Predators just looked bad.
They did. And I don't want to make excuses because here's what's real. You have to execute well regardless of circumstance. But Nashville looked like a team in the middle of a 12-game road trip in which they had traveled, they said last night, through 4 time zones. That's just how they looked. They were, that first period was so all Arizona, and Nashville was so far behind, and keep in mind, Arizona had recalled an AHL goaltender, and Ivan let me see if I can get this right, Prosvetov. And he came in, and Nashville played such a terrible first period. Arizona played such a fast first period. Like you talked about, the shots were completely uneven. And you give a young goaltender like that confidence in the first 20 minutes, and we've talked about this. Goaltending is wizardry, people. It is not science. It is wizardry. And you give a young goaltender a good 20 minutes, and he's going to be like, I'm awesome for the next 40 minutes. And in Nashville, just did not play well last night, and Arizona capitalized on it, as they do, because look, Arizona, you can say what you want to say about the organization. You can say whatever you want to say about the arena. They're not necessarily the joke their record shows they are. And Nashville will be the first to stand up and testify because they get us every time. Not every time, but enough times. They get us.
If you go to naturalstattrick.com and look at the heat map from this last game, the heat map for the Coyotes was directly right in front of UC Saros. That's where they got the bulk of their chances. The biggest blue spot for the Nashville Predators, where they got most of their chances, like way back towards like the edge of the slot, like kind of beyond the hash marks.
Yeah.
Where the circles are. Like, that's way far back, and that should give you the conclusion that the Predators are giving a goalie who came in with 6 NHL appearances and a .858 save percentage they were making things way too easy for him. And, credit to this guy, because this guy made a couple of really good
He
saves.
did.
Really good saves. But, he made 39 out of, 40 shots on goal. He made 39 saves for a goalie who had greatly struggled as a pro, not just in the NHL, but in the minors as well, who now all of a sudden is looking like, a franchise goaltender against your team. And part of that is just you made it way too easy on them.
Yes. Yeah, they did. And Nashville, I think, started out with just a real quick power play goal. And what looked good on the power play is there was a lot of power play movement. Here's where I think it became a problem is I think Nashville got caught up in, hey, look how great we looked on this power play moving the puck, even though they didn't score on that one or any of the next, 5 that they had.
Yep.
But I think they got into their mind where it almost felt like they were playing for that basketball coach. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you run into a basketball coach who says you have to make 8 passes before anybody can shoot. And that's what the Nashville Predators almost fell into. They had a power play with 26 seconds left to go in the second period, and they spent so much time passing that puck around. They had immediate puck possession in the zone. They could have put a shot on goal, but they were passing the puck around so much that they wasted 26 seconds and never got a shot on goal right in that beginning. And it felt like that was the game for Nashville. It was east-west. It was, let's try something flashy. Y'all, that's not who we are.
Let's talk about that in a second, because I definitely need to respond to that and dive into that kind of thought too, because I definitely agree with you, and I kind of want to make a couple of points to follow up on that. First, though, I want to mention today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, not just the NHL that's happening now, but the NBA season is in full swing. So now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And that's because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. All you have to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, which is safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you get a bet on everything from money line to point scores to three-point strain. Exclusive bets like the 2x3, which are 2 3-pointers scored in the first 3 minutes, as well as a number of different player props, including rebounds, assists, blah, blah, blah. All that good stuff you can find at FanDuel. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Ann, let's talk about the power play, because you made a point about the Preds maybe passing it too much and worried too much about the puck movement. And I agree with you. And this was a problem that came up, kind of in the Laviolette era too, because they were feeding it. There wasn't as much player movement and puck movement, but you could tell what they were trying to do. And it's kind of the same. They're 2 different problems, but they kind of had the same end result. The Predators just don't have that pure finisher. That pure guy that's going to score like 50 goals and 30 assists per year, or, the guy that does nothing but just shoot the puck. Like nothing but finish. Forsberg may be the closest thing you have to that. You think back at the Peter Laviolette era, and the Preds power play was really good when you had Shea Weber and when you had PK Subban.
Yes.
Even to a lesser extent, somebody like James Neal. You know why? Because they were shooters. They had monster shots, either just slap shots from the point, but also just that killer shot. Just a lot of pace, a lot of accuracy, could just pick corners and just get it through screen after screen after screen. And the reason it stopped working when those 2 guys left is because Nashville didn't really have that shooter anymore. And I look at the Nashville Predators now, and that's kind of the problem with some of these prospects. I love Cody Glass. I love Phil Tomasino. but they're setup guys. Like, they're really
Right.
good passers. They're really good at puck movement. But I look at this team and I wonder, where's that one shooter? Like,
Yes.
where's that one guy that the moment the puck touches his stick, he's looking at the net. Like, he is looking to just pick the top corner, even if it's an ill-advised shot. Somebody who's going to get like 8, 9 shots a game and is just going to try to pick corner after corner after corner. Where's that guy for the Nashville Predators? Forsberg's the closest they have, and you can definitely tell the difference with him not out there. But like, somebody in this team, Ann, has got to be that pure finisher, or else this
Yes.
team is in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was really surprised last night at how few shots Roman Yossi took, especially on the power play, because in the previous games against Arizona, Roman Yossi was, I think he had 3 or 4 power play goals against Arizona. Like, he has been really deadly from that point. And when you put the puck on net, if you've got some traffic in front of the net, good things happen. Last night, they fell back into a habit that, like you said, we've seen where they're looking for this perfect shot. And I think you talked about, Cody Glass. He is one of those players where I think he is so focused on playmaking and passing that sometimes he's giving up shot opportunities. And the Predators, even all healthy, looking at a completely healthy roster with, like you said, Philip Forsberg back, Ryan Johansson back. Where is that guy? The Predators don't really have that person. And we saw it last night. It was so evident last night that the Predators don't have that goal scorer. And look, I don't necessarily think the Predators have to have a Connor McDavid. I mean, everybody
Yeah,
wants one,
that
but
it
they
would be
need
great. Yeah.
it would, I mean, I've heard it's amazing, but you have to have somebody who says, "Give me the puck and I'll put it on net." Matt Duchene is somebody you think would be that. Matt Duchene had no shots last night. I mean, he was not looking to shoot. And it seems like this team ebbs and flows, especially this season. It's like they're in this learning curve of, you have to remind them, put the puck on net and good things will happen. We've heard John Hynes say this after games. We've heard players say this after games. Wins or losses, we have to put the puck on net. But they get caught up sometimes in creating that they don't finish. And
Right.
this is how you end up losing 4-1.
Yeah. And I don't know who the Predators have in that organization right now. Maybe Joachim Kamel
Yeah.
is going to
Maybe
be that guy, just a pure
Evangelista.
shooter. You
Maybe.
had one. You had a guy that would be perfect for this situation. I hate to keep harping on it.
Don't do it.
I
Don't
mean,
say it.
it's weird. Like, it's very weird to think of Ellie Tolvanen now, because it's like, boy, how perfect would he be in this situation?
But would he?
Yeah, I mean,
But was he?
he would be getting a chance right now instead of John
But
Leonard.
was
That's for sure.
he? But was he? I keep coming back. The Ellie Tolvanen thing is like it's like an 8-part episode series, because I just have so many questions about the Ellie Tolvanen thing. On paper, he's the guy. Absolutely. So why wasn't he? And I know everybody wants to say it's because of John Hynes, and that's something we're going to dive into in a minute too. But yeah, they don't have that guy, and you have to have somebody on the team that is going to put the puck on net.
Yeah. Another key point from last night, Ann, is where the diddly was the defense in front of UC Saros. 43 shots for the Arizona Coyotes. Without Matthias Ekholm, and I look at this team and I'm just like, oh boy, like, I just don't see enough stay-at-home capability there last night. Look, I know it's funny because in the past 2 years, you got 2 guys for this exact same reason. You got Jeremy Lazan with the 2nd-round pick last year. You got Cal Foote as a byproduct of this, the Tanner Jeannot trade. two
Right.
guys that you're like, you know what? They're not going to be flashy, but you know what? They're going to be defensively responsible, stay on their own end. And I am far from saying they were the biggest problems last night,
Mhm.
but I just look and I'm like, some of these plays, it's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing out there? And, fine on the penalty kill when your entire job is to just stand there and try to let the puck hit you. But I don't know, and it's other guys like Tyson Barrie. Love his game offensively, has not been great defensively. Ryan Patrick, sorry, and his game has just not been the same since he and Roman Yossi have split up.
Yes.
Uh,
Mhm.
they desperately miss Alexander Carey. I
They
think that
do.
has been evident in the past couple of games. And Dante Fabro knew what this contract has been fine, but not great.
Yeah.
And it's just I look at his defense and then I look at the prospect pool for the defense, and I'm like, it's the same as that pure shooter. It's like, okay, what's gonna happen here? How do you fix this?
Yeah. And I agree with you. You look at the prospect pool, and there are some really interesting defensive prospects, but they're not anywhere near ready to come into the NHL. Like they're just not there yet. I agree with you. I think a huge absence is Alexander Carrier because you can't really put McDonough and Yossi together. And that is a pairing the Predators are going to need to be successful because you have Roman Yossi. Roman Yossi just doesn't play the same game when he's not with somebody like Ryan Patrick, who is that responsible stay-at-home defender. The defense did not look good last night. They needed to pass the hat and buy an I'm sorry, Saros gift because they really left him out to dry in a lot of ways. You talk about Jeremy Lazan and bringing him in as kind of more of that stay-at-home defenseman, but you notice he's kind of going down in and getting in the mix offensively a little bit more. And so you're like, okay, wait a minute, what is his game going to look like? And if he's going to be doing that, who do you pair with him? Because, this is a defense that's going to get beat if they overplay things. And we saw it last night. There was
Yeah.
a time where they kind of overplayed and Arizona countered and scored. Defensively, this team they need Carrier back. And again, we know that's gonna be some time. It's not gonna be a quick return for Alexander Carrier, but there's some things that they're gonna need to look at. Again, I think let's see some more from Tyson Barrie, from Cal Foote, see where that settles in. But boy, I'll tell you what, last night was not a game that made you feel super confident about the blue line.
I don't know. Last night was a game that made me feel super confident about anything, and if we're being
You are
quite honest.
you are not wrong, friend.
Yeah,
You are
I
not
mean,
wrong.
for the Nashville Predators, it is what it is at this point.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody should either be looking at a full tank job or playoffs right now. I think
Right.
their main thing is let's just get through the end of the season, and where we end up, we end up. Hey, maybe we do turn things around and we make just some wild out of nowhere playoff run. Sure, that could happen. The Predators could also play this way for the rest of the season and wind up with a top 10 pick. We don't know. And I think that's going to kind of be the message for the next, however many years this is as we're in this transition. It's just they're going to end up where you end up. You just need to make sure the players that you have on the roster are doing the things that they need to do game to game. You need to see progression from guys. You need to see players, veteran players who have bad games, be able to rebound the very next game and not necessarily get caught up in this funk. That's what you're going to look for as you're judging the Nashville Predators over this next however long this takes for them to be back in contenders. Maybe 2 years, maybe 12. Who knows? But that's, I think,
Yep.
how you're going to judge the success of the Nashville Predators is making sure that the things you need to happen, both game to game, week to week, season to season, you need to see progression and you need to see veteran leaders being able to be consistent. And I think
Yes.
that's the big thing that's going to judge the Nashville Predators. The other big what if, and revolves around coaching.
Oh gosh.
Let's make it clear. John Hynes, no indication he's going anywhere. There have been whispers from some people, bloggers, writers, whatever you want to call them, that said the coaching change might be a part of this new transition over the next year. We also saw Barry Trotz give John Hynes a sort of vote of confidence. Not that that means anything, but that hasn't stopped people from debating John Hynes' future as well as a potential replacement.
Yes. Very interesting. Our good friend Charlie Saunier, he covers the Predators for the Renegades of Puck, and he put out an interesting video. It is well worth a listen, talking about the case for Karl Taylor, who is the Milwaukee Admirals head coach, somebody that Nick and I think the world of. So I want to be very clear. I have big feelings about this, Nick, and I didn't jump into the Twitter discourse because it's smart enough not to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and do this now. And for people who want to debate me, you can find me at _NS Morgan on Twitter and send your feedback.
You will be blocked immediately.
Yeah. Here's a couple things I want to say about this. First of all, if John Hynes is not the next coach next season of the Nashville Predators, it absolutely must, should, and hopefully will be Karl Taylor. So I want to be clear. I am extremely pro Karl Taylor. Karl Taylor deserves to be an NHL coach. He is ready for that. He was the AHL Coach of the Year last season. I mean, you could go on and on about all of the reasons why I 100% agree that if John Hynes is not the coach of the Nashville Predators, Karl Taylor should be that. Here's where I have a problem. I am not ready to say, and I know I'm in the minority, I am not ready to say that John Hynes should not get a chance next year. And I know I'm in the minority with this, but I have big feelings about this. So here is where I'm at, and then you can jump in and talk me down. John Hynes came in, and here's what's real. When John Hynes came in, people hated that hiring from the moment it was announced.
Very fair. Yes.
Hated that hiring. He was given zero chance. There is nothing John Hynes could do. If John Hynes dropped a golden puck out his sphincter on center ice, people would still hate him. They would still hate him. And here is why. It has so little to do with John Hynes. And I think it has so much to do with this fan base and certain people in this fan base who will not admit they might be wrong. Here's my argument about John Hynes. They hated him from day one. Doesn't matter what he does. People are not going to like this. People then say, well, his system sucks. The problem, we got to get rid of John Hynes because his system sucks. John Hynes came in and did the exact same system and did the same play that Peter Laviolette did. He inherited a system. Tell me, like, what is David Poile drafts for hard forechecking, for, tough to play against, all of this identity talk that we've heard. So this isn't just like John Hynes coming in. This is something that's been in place here. Now, if you think about it, the Nashville Predators, you don't hear so much about that. You see the Predators are kind of focusing more on let's create and capitalize on rush chances. Let's take advantage of some speed. So I feel like you're seeing a transition in the play from John Hynes. He will not get any credit for that because he is the problem. If it is the system, people are pro Karl Taylor because he knows the Predator system and it's going to be a flawless transition. You cannot hate the system that John Hynes plays, but advocate for Karl Taylor because he's so familiar with it. Do you know what I'm saying? If the system is the problem, it doesn't matter who your coach is. So again, I come back to y'all just don't like John Hynes. Y'all just don't like John Hynes. And finally, here is my biggest beef. And this is a hill I will die on, and I will die fruitlessly, I know. But the NHL should be about developing coaches and general managers. And I am exhausted by people who demand a young coach come in, and you don't want to develop a coach. You want a winning coach. And I get that, except it's not realistic. John Hynes he had 5 years in New Jersey. It was a rough 5 years. Like, that was not great. His win-loss percentage, not great. Nashville Predators, been a rough haul with the Nashville Predators too. But he inherited a system that is supposedly his fault, coached through COVID. He was coaching a core where the expectation was this is a team that could make a deep playoff run. And this core, we've seen, that's not who they were, but it's John Hynes' fault that it's not who they were. I think this is the chance to give John Hynes another season. You have Barry Trotz as a general manager. He knows what it is to be in that locker room. He knows what it takes to be a winning coach. There is no reason for John Hynes not to get a year with Barry Trotz as the general manager. If after a year it's not a great fit, I'm 100% team Karl Taylor. I will be excited, but I am exhausted by the John Hynes hate because you just don't like him because you decided not to like him. And there is nothing John Hynes could do that would turn most people in this fan base around, because this fan base, there's a large percentage, they just want to be right. That's all they want. They want to be right. And they want an enemy.
And I think that's the key word is there's a lot of people that want to be right. Yeah. And it's just, I think, a society thing now. Yeah. That's a whole different social commentary that we can dive into on another day. My thing with John Hynes is no different from Barry Trotz or Peter Laviolette, or for that matter, any coach the Nashville Predators will ever have, or for that matter, any coach that has ever coached in the NHL. There are things that you should give him credit for, and there are things that he deserves some blame for. John Hynes' system, say what you want, it worked for a lot of last year until it didn't.
True.
And do I think the concept of line identity is great? No, not really. The biggest thing was when you heard David Poile talk about, I'm sorry to keep coming back to this, and the Ellie Tolvanen thing. And, they kind of asked him, it's like, well, what have you seen that really works out for him in Seattle? And David Poile said, well, they kind of play differently. They play like kind of roll out all four lines equally. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why didn't we try that? Why did we have to try to pigeonhole players into certain spots? And I think maybe that's my thing with John Hynes is, you came to this year with Ellie Tolvanen, Cody Glass, and, to a lesser extent, Phil Tomasino, who went down to the minors but had a lot of playing time last year. And you have all these extra skill guys, and you're looking at it as like, oh, but we only have, one skill spot, which is somebody to play with Johansson and Niederreiter. And at that point, it's like, well, if he's not going to play on the second line, then there's not really a place for him where he needs to go, because we have the Herd line as 3, and we want our fourth line to play this way. And I think maybe that is my one qualm with John Hynes is, okay, why don't you change up the way you're coaching to accommodate the better players, instead of trying to pigeonhole certain players into your system? That is my biggest beef with John Hynes. So I agree with the set that I do think he mismanaged some of the youth, and I do think he left stuff on the table. I would have just liked to see him be a little less rigid and be like, no, the third line has to be a certain way and they have to play in these situations. I will say I think he's done better throughout the season, because you're starting to see guys – like Juuso Parson, for instance, like Tommy Novak, get more responsibility, get more power play time, get more chances in areas where they're best at, and also less ice time in places that might be a shortcoming to them. Like, Tommy Novak's playing like 14, 15 minutes a night, but getting all of the power play time. And that's because John Hynes looks at him and it's like, yeah, I don't really want to put you out there for a defensive zone face-off right now, which that is good. I like that. And that gives me, pause to say, okay, well, if that's going to be the thing, then maybe he does get a chance as long as he sticks with that and doesn't go back to, well, I want a third line that plays like this and a fourth line that plays like this. I think you have to take whoever your best players are, whoever the players that give you a best chance of win, and you have to figure out, okay, how do I make these players work? How do I make this work?
Right.
And not necessarily who are the best players that fit in the system. Because if you do that, you're going to have a situation like you did, a few years ago where David Poile is just bringing in guy after guy after guy after guy, and they wind up on the fourth line or third line or not in a conducive spot because there's no communication with the head coach on, okay, how do these players fit? So I think you got to take the best players you have and figure out how to use them in an effective way. That's what I'll say for John Hynes. The one thing that I think at the end of the day, if you're going to judge John Hynes, is judge him on what do you need from this team? And that I think is how you judge what you do at the head coaching position in the offseason. What do you need from this team? Are you in a position where you need to make sure your young players develop? Is that where you're at? Because if so, admittedly, John Hynes might not be the best coach for that because because he doesn't have the best track record of developing players, even back to the New Jersey Devils. That's maybe where Karl Taylor comes in. But if your goal is to take this team, if Barry Trotz brings some guys in the offseason and your peak is, okay, we need a mix of development, but we also need to try to win, maybe you do see what John Hynes can do with this team. I think you need to sit down and figure out, what do you need from the head coach next year? What does this team need? And then you make a decision. And again, maybe it is John Hynes. Maybe John Hynes comes back. Maybe you do go Karl Taylor because you need to put more of a focus on developing the youth. I don't know, but that's what's going to be the decision for the Nashville Predators, not because Karl Taylor is the next man up. I hate the concept of just giving a guy a job because he just happens to be the next man up or he's quote unquote ready. I have some qualms with the Barry Trotz hiring for that exact same reason.
Really?
But I think you need to judge the future of the head coaching position based on what your team needs, and then find a guy, whether he's in your organization, whether he's somebody else in the NHL, and figure out what is the best fit based on need.
The only thing I agree with you, that's what you need to do. I do think that John Hynes deserves an opportunity to be that guy because he deserves to be invested in and developed. This fan base is so frustrated that they feel like certain players weren't developed according to the path they think it takes to get there. The Phil Tomasino thing. Oh, he was in the AHL. I think John Hynes deserves a chance to be developed just like these players do. And I think that will happen best with a year of Barry Trotz. And I think whether you want somebody who is going to develop young players or somebody who is going to take the veterans and pull out of them what you need, John Hynes deserves the opportunity. I think he has earned the opportunity to grow in that skill set for a season. Yeah. But I agree with you. Karl Taylor is not just going to be handed to him. If John Hynes is not the next head coach of the Nashville Predators, Karl Taylor should be.
Yeah.
But I'm not ready to give up on Hynes.
Yeah. So there's a big thing to leave you at. And we did run long.
Sorry.
So we had some big feels about that. That's for sure. So I hope you stuck with us. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at ontheforecheck.com. Be sure to follow us at LO_Predators. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll see you next week with new episodes.